Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Dragged into Turbolasers. This is episode 5, and we're Between the Bolter and Me podcast. My name's Eric Wire, and I'm joined with a full cast tonight by brother Adam.
Hey, everyone.
Greg.
Hey, everybody. It's
and our
Greg.
Good friend Brad.
Hello.
So I guess we can get right into it here. And kind of as the standard thing, we're probably going to start here talking a little bit about some of the releases and kind of new model content from that's been revealed over the first half of March, and then go into the main feature of the episode, which is actually going to be talking a little bit about Games Workshop supplement system, having that they just released the Curse of the Wolfen and re-released some previous supplements and added some things, or maybe didn't add many things, but we can get into that a little bit. And if we have a little bit of time, we might talk a little bit about some of the distressing decrease in sculpt quality of some of the newer Malifaux releases, but I'll leave that if we get to it. So, getting right into new releases for March. I think the first thing that I kind of wanted to point out, Deep Wars has a new Kickstarter.
Yeah, Kickstarter.
That I believe called Blood Reef.
Yeah, it's called Blood Reef.
It's like
and
the third.
I don't know how people know much about Deep Wars, but it's actually a small skirmish game that we've played off and on for a little while here, and it's like an underwater skirmish game where people have small bands of warriors that actually fight under the ocean, so it's not like land-based stuff. And they've had a few Kickstarters, one introducing the main game and then some introducing new forces and such.
Well, so then they also
There's
had
sea goblins in this.
They had another game called Shadow Sea, which took place above water, but still incorporated a bunch of the races from the Deep Wars game that could come up above the water, like the Cephalid, Dark Mariners. A lot of those creatures could both fight on land and in the water. And this new Kickstarter is for a new expansion called Blood Reef that can be played in both Deep Wars and Shadow Seas, so you can play stuff on land and in the sea. So it's to kind of tie in with both of those game systems, though I think both of the game systems were very similar. It's just the one had the underwater stuff. And this is adding a new faction to both games, which is the Nereids, and maybe I pronounced that wrong, but they're sea nymphs from like Greek mythology, and they're adding them, and these sea nymphs can fight both on land and in water, so it's the perfect thing to bridge the two games, I guess.
I think the most exciting part is it looks like they have a model of the Beast of Blood Reef. And that is just like a 20-foot long shark, model of a shark. And
it's
looks
a big
vicious.
fucking shark.
It's huge.
It's like the coolest thing about it, yeah. When we were talking a little bit before we started to record this, but when Brad saw it, the first thing he thought of was this little plastic shark that he and I got together. We were at some restaurant. They had some, I don't know.
Came in a drink.
Yeah, some special drink that was, I don't know, I don't even know if it was alcoholic, but I think it was primarily just like pink lemonade or red lemonade to like look like bloody water or something, and they came this little plastic shark that we affectionately named Alex, and yeah, he looks a lot like Alex. I mean, he's nicer looking.
An uncanny resemblance.
Well, interestingly, the model for Alex was sculpted by some sculptor named Bob Ollie, which he's done a lot of stuff for Deep Wars and other games. And I feel there's people have kind of a love-hate relationship with Bob Ollie. some people love his stuff and others
Yeah, man.
kind of hate his stuff. And I would lean towards the camp of saying I don't too much like what he does. This big shark's great.
Yeah, I like the big shark. I feel like I would be inclined to back it just to get that big shark.
He looks like some
that-
old venerable creature, almost like a zombie shark. I don't think he's a zombie shark, but reminds me of some
Harpoon and stuff in him.
some Spanish or Italian horror film called Zombie 2. So it was the Italians' sequel to Day of the Dead. And there's a scene in there where like a zombie battles a big shark. It's completely ridiculous, and that's what he reminds me of, this big shark. Pretty great.
So looking at it though, and I don't know how Kickstarter works because, well, I
Can't
hate
just get the
Kickstarter.
shark.
But yeah, is that true? Is there like
No,
I
so-
hear like $1 pledge things, and then like
So they've been pretty good about this in the past. They don't
Oh,
necessarily
wait,
have tons of different
for
stretch
$30.
goals.
The $30 pledge is you get the shark and a PDF of the rules for the supplements. So that's what
But they have a thing. They mention it a little bit, I think, in the bottom, that you can just pledge any amount of money and not one of the reward pledges. And they have kind of almost like a spreadsheet breakdown that for every, I don't know what it is, $10, that's a 30 millimeter based guy or something like, I don't know. So I've done it in the past. I think with their Shadow Seas Kickstarter that I just put up some money, and then after the Kickstarter was done, they just send you a thing like, what do you actually want? So
okay,
it's fine. You can get whatever. But I think it looks like they, in addition to a few of those models, they're releasing a updated version of the rules, a 2.5.
for Deep Wars,
that
you mean?
seems like they've changed a few things, expanded some things, and I don't know. I feel that might be somewhat interested in, because I think it was a pretty good rule system. And I guess, admittedly, you have to pay for an updated rule system, where in the past they would incrementally FAQ stuff and just send you new versions of the PDFs. They were pretty good about that. But this, I guess, maybe the revisions are so much they're not anymore. But they suggested here, if you already have it, they'll sell it to you at like a 40% discount or something. So I don't know. It's not too bad. And I suspect from that point on, they'll probably send you updated versions. So I don't know. I'll be interested to see where it goes.
seems like a fairly modest Kickstarter too. Once again, without knowing anything of a pledge, like a goal of $8,000 doesn't seem to.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
AntiMatter.
mean, they only started a day or two.
AntiMatter Games has always been good about that. I mean, they've had a couple Kickstarters to help fund some stuff, but they've always been a low amount. So I never felt like they were abusing the Kickstarter thing. I mean, because they legitimately are a small company.
Yeah, like AntiMatter Games, the company, like at least when it started, it's practically just the one guy, Eric Lachard. I think that might be how you say his name. He like adapted a rule system and basically wrote the rules for Deep Wars, and it was based on an old Song of Blades rule set that he modified to use underwater. And so he's the main author on the rule book. He's also one of the main sculptors. He sculpted a lot of the initial Deep Wars models as well. So
I feel most of the best models,
which is kind of neat. So it's a pretty small operation in that, like, the guy who wrote the rules sculpted most of the models. Well, I guess him and Bob Oiley. So it's a neat company, and played it a bunch. And
yeah,
have
I
a few
guess
posts on the
there's
back.
no sense in dwelling on this too much, but I guess anyone who's interested in small skirmish level games and think the notion of playing a game underwater where swimming to different depths and stuff actually affects combat, like, give this a look into. Like, it's neat.
yeah, I guess then maybe we can move on to the next topic, which is, I guess, Age of Sigmar. Age of Sigmar is back, everybody. Hooray.
Stormcast Eternals.
Just when you thought they couldn't have any more.
They're back.
Yeah, and luckily, it's like, well, I guess when you hear Storm or Age of Sigmar is back, you know that can only mean one of two things. Either some new Khorne models are being released, or the Stormcast. And, well, it's the latter in that there's some Stormcast models.
I would argue there's a third option for that some's getting reboxed with round bases. That's the third Age of Sigmar release.
Yeah, it's true. But it's a Stormcast thing, so like most of the Stormcast releases, like overall last summer, it was basically just a multi-part box set of a model that came in the starter set. And in this case, it's a box of two guys sort of riding these dragon horse-like things called Dracoths. And the starter set came with like a Lord Celestant riding one of these things, and this box set actually just comes with two multi-part models to make two of them, and one can actually be made into one of the, like a Lord Celestant to like lead your forces. So anyone who kind of has a sense of what that model was from the starter set should have a pretty good idea of what these look like. So, big Space Marine-ish guy on a big...
Sort of awkward looking, half dragon, half...
cat thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be honest, it's not all that cool. It's not all that cool.
I feel they're modeled nicely enough, but it's not that awesome. I mean, I think it's like $60 for two of them, which isn't the worst thing. Although, admittedly, they probably like have a couple formations that, like, if you have 8 of these, you'll get a bunch of great bonuses. Which is
there still a rule for
dumb,
stupidity in the game? Because it looks like these dragon things have heads so small that they could hardly house a brain. Do they suffer from stupidity?
I think some models might have that incorporated into their rules somehow, but there isn't like a stupidity rule. Like, there aren't special rules like that don't exist in the game anymore, really.
Yeah, okay.
It's on a model per model basis. So I suspect they did not include something, but yeah, their heads are pretty small. It's all teeth.
You could forge your own narrative, though, Greg. You could have your models act dumb if you want.
Yeah, that's true. I could just play horribly with them.
Yeah, but I think the riders look good
On
they look
roll
like Stormcast, but they have their big crests and stuff.
at the start of the
Yeah,
time,
think about the crests. So we decided that the dwarves' crests were real hair. Do you think that's their real hair?
No.
I hope it is, but I don't think it is.
I don't know. Maybe it's just like they painted the dragons like this dark blackish blue. I don't know. They just look weird. They look so weird.
But the guys, they have a whole host of different weapons that you can put them on, which are basically just the paladin weapons, which the paladins were the larger Terminator-like guys. So these are basically just those paladins on riding these things. So you get the big hammers, you get the pole arms with the sword at the end. You get some these crossbows, which I think the crossbows look pretty cool. They aren't that gigantic. I mean, they're still pretty big, but they're not.
The ones with the crossbows, I like how they have like a little leather strap on their back, which they have their sword strapped up. So they have the sword, a round shield, and their rather large crossbow. They could actually shoot that crossbow from the mount.
It's nice.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you like the Stormcast Eternal stuff, and you're not that upset with the dragon thing, you'd be pretty pleased with them.
Yeah, I would tend to agree.
They look pretty convincing how they're sitting and perched on the dragons as well, so they're pretty good.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess it hasn't been officially announced, but the pictures are all over the internet. This week, they're putting up on pre-order this big dragon thing called the Stardrake. I don't know if
It's an
people
even
have seen
bigger
pictures of
version
it.
of one with wings.
Yeah, pretty much. And there have been a bunch of leaked pictures of like different screenshots from the White Dwarf magazine, but there has been no picture of the back of the dragon.
Yeah, I want to see his hind quarters and his legs and shit. Like that
tail.
matters.
Yeah,
That matters.
Does he have a tail?
but
Who knows?
He does have a tail.
okay, it's hard
Like,
to tell.
He has
but it
his
looks like
wings are angled downwards, shielding the back hind quarters of him. So in all the pictures, like they're showing his cool face and stuff, but you can't see his.
Don't look back
anything
here.
else
I'm
behind him.
ashamed.
Well, yeah, that's what he's yelling. Like, no, don't take a picture of my hindquarters. No.
Could be.
Yeah, well,
Maybe
I
he has a
guess
big
also-
armor plate on his back too.
I hope.
Maybe.
I mean, it's a Warhammer.
Because honestly,
like
it kind of looks like a juggernaut.
Juggernaut,
Yeah.
bitch. Well, his yelling face is
I
the
think
staple of Warhammer.
Yeah. I think
He has a
the
closed
head,
one,
the head
too.
of the dragon is good. He looks nice. It's the most dragon-like dragon I've seen in a while from him.
The dragon
Yeah,
has
that's good.
some
That's fair.
substantial heft to it. Like, a lot of the old GW dragons were so spindly and pathetic looking. This actually looks like it might be powerful.
He looks a little bit like the expensive as hell model of Schmaug. Schmaug!
Oh, no, he's a reasonable 100. This model is a reasonable $140.
Is he really that cheap?
That's how much he is. Yeah, whereas Schmaug is like $600 or something.
Jeez, yeah.
Was it resin or
Though I think it
or
was some
something?
resin. It was a resin thing that they only cast a bunch of them. So, which probably means that when they make the Hobbit 5, 6, and 7, they'll re-release Schmaug in a plastic form. Yeah, the Hobbit 5, 6, and 7, also known as the Silmarillion.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously not, but
Yeah, let's hope not. Let's hope that never happens.
yeah, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see pictures. At least when they release the official stuff, we'll be able to 360 this thing and see what's hidden behind those wings.
Yeah, hopefully it's something great.
Maybe there's just a lack of detail
Rider
back
looks
there.
fine.
Maybe there's a big skull
It
back
looks like
there.
there's scales and shit. Maybe.
Big
The
old
rider
skull.
looks all right. I mean, I don't think he looks as good as the Celestant on like the smaller things, but he's not bad.
The plumed helmet looks pretty stupid, I think.
Well, I mean, this just gets back to like the problem with a lot of the classic Warhammer, like larger monsters and stuff. There's not an obvious way the person could ride the beast, and so they create these like elaborate saddle throne things that they're.
Well, at least it's not an anvil.
Yeah,
It would have been
it's
cool
not
if it
an
was an
anvil.
anvil.
That's true.
Well, maybe the Stormcast joins up with the dwarves at the Magma Park and has a good it could almost be like they could release specialist games when it comes back. They could release their own new sports game it's a little bit faster paced than Dreadball, whereas everyone rides around their big monsters.
So, looking closer at this, I will say the front legs of this dragon, like, they are pretty wonky looking. Like, what the fuck is going on there? Like, what is that a knee? Are their knees covered?
It's
But there's
weird.
no like
It's weird.
whoosh.
It's really weird.
I don't feel that looks like it would make much anatomical sense at all. Maybe that's what he's yelling about. Why didn't you give me legs? Games Workshop, why would you do this to me?
Yeah, and he's forever encased in his rage.
Poor little guy.
Yeah, there's the one that's screaming in rage, and the other one that's just sort of given up and is now apathetic about it.
Well, you might be able to create a nice Werven out of this. Remove the front legs, move the wings up. Could be good. Could be good.
Yeah, maybe.
Or you could make a cool Warhammer 40,000 conversion where you cut off the legs and put on like turbine things or like jetpack thruster things where all four of the legs should have been. Or it could be a cool Fire Drake conversion for your Chaos Space.
A Hell Drake conversion.
There you go.
I don't know what they're called. Just combine some cool words together and you could get it. Fire Drake, Hell Drake.
Yeah, Hell Drake.
Cool Drake.
The Meteor Smasher. Something. Going to the Sin of Damnation.
Yeah, Sin of Damnation.
Yeah.
Alright, well, I feel we've talked enough about these Age of Sigmar models. It'll be interesting to see if there's anything new down the road other than Reeboks and Orcs. And...
Quick aside, are they making a whole new book for the Stormcast to put this stuff in? I thought I saw
it looks like they're
book.
releasing a smaller book that's just like maybe a $30 softcover thing.
Okay.
To expand the narrative and add some of that stuff. So
yeah,
I don't know, for whatever it is.
I bought the first Stormcast Eternal book, the electronic version of it, and never read it. Maybe I should read it.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Nah, I don't know. It might be worth reading.
Yeah. All right, let's soldier on. Talk for 20 minutes.
Yeah, well, talked about models. That's what our blog and stuff's about, right?
Yeah.
Well, so moving on to the episode features, the main thing we wanted to talk about was GW's obsession with supplements.
Yeah.
It seems like instead of, or like it seems their kind of new strategy rather than just constantly re-releasing or like rewriting their codex books, they are on a kick of releasing sort of advancing narrative sort of stuff via supplements in which they'll basically take 2 or 3 armies and write about some conflict they had together, release a supplement talking about that extends some of the rules for those 2, perhaps 3 armies, as a way that they can then like add new orc units or new Tau units, that sort of thing. And it's a sort of an interesting strategy. I guess it started like a couple of years ago with, I think it was their Sanctus Reach, like supplement box, which was dealing with some orcs and, well, primarily orcs and space wolves.
Yeah, I think in the later books, the Grey Knights and Demons show up, but they didn't get any models. So,
I mean, I love the orcs, and I don't even know what you're talking about.
Well, like, I think one of the main things that sort of accompanied most of these sorts of supplements was they would release like a box set that, or at least initially, that came with like a small force of like both armies. And with the Sanctus Reach stuff, they released a thing that had a bunch of space wolves and a bunch of orcs. And they had 2 new models, a space wolf leader guy, which maybe his name's
Gruck.
Krull or Gruck, Crom, whatever. We talked about him last time, actually. That looks a little bit like the Space Wolf on the like 4th or 3rd edition cover. They released him and an Orc War Boss, which have now a couple of years later sort of been re-released, but they started to do this with the supplements. Then they did it later with the Shield of Baal supplements, which were Blood Angels and Tyranids. And they kind of did it again with the more recent Warzone Damocles stuff, with like Monka and Carrion. I don't even remember what it's called. But they had Tau and Raven Guard. But in that case, they actually separated the Tau and the Raven Guard into two separate boxes. But having seen all that stuff, they kind of have a strategy that I think was sort of started with the End Times format with Warhammer, where when they were doing the End Times thing, they would release like a rather expensive, like a $75-ish thing of 2 books packaged together in some slipcase, one of which was primarily background and the other was a bunch of rules. And these supplements kind of follow that same sort of thing, in which, each supplement has a background thing and a set of rules. And at least for the 40K stuff, it seems that they tend to release one of those $75 set of books and then a little bit later release another one. And that kind of fills out and finishes that arc. So it's kind of expensive. But,
yeah. Well, some positives I think from this is that, like you said, those like starter sets, they're a pretty decent deal, I feel. I guess sometimes you get saddled with models you wouldn't otherwise purchase, but...
Well, most of the time they're at least now just the normal multi-part plastic kits, and they're not some, like, doctored up release to make like snap fit models.
Yeah, now that is true. They weren't straight up just normal box sets put together in one. So that is nice.
Well, I feel one of the big reasons why they're probably doing this is just because it gives them a means where they can start releasing new units and new models for the game.
And not feel burdened to have to release the whole codex.
Yeah, because like in the past, they would release a codex that was filled with different interesting units, and they might not actually have a unit or models for them for like a year or two. And then I guess they ran into some legal trouble with other companies trying to essentially make those units. So I think now they're trying to be a little safer about it. And whatever books they release, they have to have models for all of the entries. So this kind of gets around that need. They can release new models at more of a leisurely pace and then just release these supplement books that have the rules for them, and then in addition to that, kind of advance some narrative or story behind the forces involved.
Yeah. I think the thing I dislike the most about these sort of like supplement things is it kind of reminds me of like the, Codex Armageddon and that sort of stuff. And like what happens to some of the units and stuff in these supplements when like we move on to the next edition or whatever. And like, I think it's a very gray area.
One thing that has been somewhat interesting, at least for the Damocles stuff with the Tau, they actually at that time took that as an opportunity to reprint the Tau Codex, adding those new units to it, and said hey guys, if you already have the Tau Codex, it really hasn't changed except some new units were added, so you don't really have to buy the Codex. You can just buy the
supplement.
$150 worth of supplement books to get those units. So I guess I'm just saying that at least in some cases they have taken it as an opportunity to reprint those older books with the slight changes. So yeah, but it's somewhat interesting. I feel, admittedly, I haven't gotten any of these supplements because they're $75 for each of them, and none of them really have dealt with armies I'm
But Eric, you have a Blood Angels army. could have sworn you got Shield of Ball.
Yeah, I have like a tactical squad of Blood Angels, I admit it.
And a command squad painted in Blood Angels colors.
That's true.
Stormbolter captain with a jump pack.
Yeah,
Don't forget
true.
him.
Yeah, well,
We'll never forget.
Never forget.
If anything, I think it's neat that they have also used it as an opportunity to do a little bit more with the storyline. Admittedly, nothing has thus far like really advanced it into like the 42nd millennium, for example. But at least they're like
Wolf on her back.
doing something. Yeah, which admittedly the newest one is the Wolfen thing, which I think they call it as Warzone Fenris, which they've only released the first of these $75 books, and that actually seems to have partially involved the Dark Angels, which I play the most.
Eric, you need to get that. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I don't really know. It seems the Changeling was aboard one of the Dark Angels battle cruisers, and the demon fooled the entire chapter.
They use him for fucking everything.
Wait, who's the
He
Changeling?
does seem kind of a special character. Zinc special character that can change into stuff.
He tricked the whole Dark Angels Legion to bring the rock to Fenris.
It seemed like that's kind of what he did, although admittedly, everyone was kind of upset. Yeah, I mean, that's very true. But admittedly, the Grey Knights seem to have been there too, and like maybe them.
Eric, you need to read this and tell us about it in a future podcast. I want to know.
We need an update.
Yeah. But I mean, admittedly, I think in it, like Fenris and like the planets in the Fenris system or whatever are like completely overrun with demons. So perhaps they will not actually in the next book make it into a big thing. It's just like, we were firing on the demon infested planet because there were demons there. The Grey Knights have our back. They believe us because they're there.
So
too.
To comment on the Blood Angels army that Eric has, this goes back the whole way to when the three of us started to play Warhammer in the second edition of the game. The box game came with 2 tactical squads and like 20 orc boys and like 40 Gretchen. We knew so little about the game that we thought that you were supposed to paint each tactical squad from a different Space Marine chapter. So we painted 1 Dark Angels and 1 Blood Angels. And then pretty quickly realized our folly.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, we realized their folly, but then we continued to build both forces for like a year or 2.
Well, that's just like they released some neat... Well, actually, no, but remember the second edition Blood Angels Codex was like the Angels of Death. It had both the Blood Angels and the Dark Angels in it, so I feel maybe we thought there were some cool models from each of the chapters, and we're like, oh my god, let's get some cool things from all the forces. Yes, I don't know. We've hit a stumbling block here. Looks like the program we're using to record all of the vocal tracks is Zencaster. It looks like a couple of us have dropped out. So we're wondering if all the vocal tracks have recorded. If they haven't, oh, sweet mother of God.
So
it looks like...
Should I close this one?
No. To me, it looks like only you, Adam, or Adam is not in here. I tried to paste the thing back. You could try to join again. Sorry, everybody. Technical difficulties. Nothing ever goes too smoothly.
No. Well, so I don't even quite where were we? We were talking about our Blood Angels and Dark Angels army and how the Dark Angels were fooled into flying to Fenris by the Changeling.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to read all the stuff, and maybe I'll do that. But yeah, paying $75 to have that. I mean, I guess there's digital versions of them that are a little bit cheaper.
$50 as opposed to $75. That's not too good. Not too good. Well, no, it's not.
So kind of in the same sense, but not really. The Orc Codex supplement.
There was an
I
Orc
feel like
Codex.
that was a scam.
I don't even know. There was such a thing.
So
I am so out of the loop for 40K. Why was it a scam, Brad? Inform me.
Well,
I mean, you kind of probably remember this, Greg. After the first 7th edition codex was the Orc Codex, and like a week after it, or they had another codex called like Gaskell.
Yeah.
It's a supplement book. It's that.
Well, haven't they kind of always been doing that? Like the Dark Angels Codex, they had the Homunculus Covens book with some stuff. Haven't they done a lot of that? Or it might
but they re-released it. And they fooled me into thinking it'd have fun things in it. And it didn't.
So they like re-released recently the Gaskell thing or something?
Yep, with a new Decurion style, or however you say
so
that.
I think the main thing was like the Orcs, since they were the first codex, they didn't have that Decurion Necron style way to field your army that like tells you get a bunch of this stuff and you'll get all these benefits. With that was first introduced with the Necron thing, hence the Decurions, kind of what everyone calls these things. But every single codex since has had one of these things. And like when they kind of re-released the Tau book through one of these supplements, they added their own, I think, or at least I assume they did, a Decurion type thing. And so as kind of a pseudo way to do this for the Orcs, they released this and said, we're giving you a Decurion. And that's what they did and not much else. And I don't know, is there a new Decurion thing? Is it any good?
No. Like, it only worked really for like really large games, like 2000 and over, because the forced formations you're forced to take, one of which composes of like 6 squads of boys, a squad of knobs, and like a squad of Gretchen, I guess.
That's all you'd want, though.
Well, I think from what I had heard, like the Decurion isn't necessarily horrible. It's just it only really works in one way you'd play the list, and that's in which when you have Gaskell, and the only way you can get him in this is by spending like 700 points to get this big Death Star of some war bosses, Gaskell, like Grotsnick, and all this stuff. That isn't necessarily bad, but if you don't really like the whole Death Star type play, you might not be that thrilled with it, because you can't just get him. You have to get this Death Star of all these units. But I think it gives him a 2+ invulnerable save or something.
What the formation does is every turn he calls the wall, he gets a +2 invulnerable save. You can wall on every turn. So
does he become invisible too? If he doesn't do that, he's probably not competitive.
It also doesn't give him a jump pack.
No jump packs.
No.
It's one of the psychic powers, or one of the psychic disciplines that people like.
From what I understand, it's like the go-to thing in competitive play.
Or at least for, I think, Chaos, the only way they can be good is by getting a bunch of, or using invisibility to make their units you can only hit on 6s and stuff.
One could say the Orcs have invisibility competitively because no one plays them.
Yeah. Invisibility in like the least enjoyable sense. Yeah, they're just not in existence, which is a shame, because I think the Orc models in general, or at least the Brian Nelson era ones, are pretty great.
Seb's made some pretty good ones too.
Yeah, Seb made the new Archeon model, best model. Yeah, everyone knows it.
You know, we know it.
Yeah, or GW thought it was the best model in their most recent White Dwarf magazine. They had top 10 best models of the year. Archeon was number 1.
Yeah, how did that win?
Well, is that
Number
2016?
2015, I think. They released their GW's declared best models, which in itself is sort of weird. But they said the best model was Archeon, or I don't even know how you pronounce his name. Him. They said he was the best model.
I mean, he's fine.
Does anyone remember what the number 2 was?
Like they did that thing. Are you talking about the thing they did around the holidays?
I'm pretty sure. Well, they I think last year they did it around the holidays, and this year I think they just did it.
Yeah, it was in the more recent White Dwarf.
Well, so I do remember the third favorite was that Dark Angels Interrogator Chaplain, which in itself is kind of a joke. The Night Titan was like number 8. They couldn't put it at number 1 2 years in a row. But it still came into play because they released it both years.
Yeah, they did.
But yes, I don't know. I'm sure they'll continue to release supplement stuff, and maybe kind of at the exclusion of re-releasing books, which in some sense is nice in that you don't have to necessarily keep rebuying your codex. But
you can if you're duped into it.
Yeah, but so in some sense, I feel I would rather them guys, we shit the bed with the Orc codex and we're just going to actually redo it rather than put on a pathetic band-aid, and actually we need some serious work here. I mean, it works fine for some armies that weren't horrible to begin with. They're not going to fix the Dark Eldar book by releasing a Decuron type thing for them, that won't do it. And
maybe they'll give them a Lord of War.
I mean, even with the Tyranids, I feel they've been more than most of the armies. They've been continually releasing kits. Part of it was through their Leviathan Shield of Baal thing that they released, the Tyranid drop pod, and they released a bunch of big things that I think were all right. But even adding a bunch of new units doesn't change the fact that the army isn't that great. It needs more of a substantial revision, I think. Whereas it might work fine, with Space Marines, they're fine, and adding more formations for them will be good. But although I guess to be honest, we don't really play the game, so we're certainly not in a competitive sense where this matters much. Yeah. Maybe it just matters in the sense that you kind of hope the rules aren't totally horrible, in that maybe people other than just hobbyists, but people who actually play the game would be excited about it and want to continue to buy models and increase the appeal of the hobby. But well, whatever. I guess we had mentioned at the beginning that perhaps we could talk a little bit about Malifaux and the state of their models. And I don't want to belabor this too much, but we can say a little bit about it. And I think I would start saying Malifaux, when it was first released, first edition, I had seen a lot of stuff about it, but it didn't appeal to me that much because I would see the boxes of the different masters in the hobby shops and such, and there would be these kind of bad looking single cast metal models that even if the concept behind the master was cool, the models just didn't look that good. But admittedly, most of the concepts didn't even seem that cool either. But I think it was mainly I didn't love the models that much. But that kind of changed when they released this second edition and started to pretty much redesign all the stuff, digitally sculpt them on the computer. And by and large, almost all their original models were pretty good, even if you weren't that thrilled with like the concept, like maybe you're not that jammed about zombie prostitutes, but they're still were nicely made and stuff, and it led us to actually start to look into the game and play it a little bit. And I really like the system. I feel the rule system with the fate deck cards and such is really neat, and it allows you a lot of control over the game itself, and it's not just strictly random, like, well, you rolled poorly and you're going to suffer for it. Like the fact that you have a whole deck of cards to work with and a hand of cards that you can use to modify stuff, I thought was pretty neat. But as of late, I feel the models aren't as nice looking as they had been. And to preface this, I should say that Malifaux has always had a pretty distinct style in which all the characters are really thin, really long legs, pretty slender and such, which in itself is perhaps not that anatomically correct, but it was never done to too much to the extreme. But I feel as of late, a lot of the models being released have taken this like above and beyond what they had been doing before, to the point that I feel almost all their models look bad. Not just like a stylistic choice, that it's just they don't look good. And
but the thing that I think is the weirdest, a lot of the artwork for the models look fine, like their proportions are fine. They're not that over the top. But then once they actually get the 3D renders of the models, they like make their legs about twice as long and their head about twice as small, and some of the stuff just looks ridiculous.
Yeah, which like I guess some of the newer models, like they made the one, it's I think it's sort of a mercenary guy named Sue, which has like, he's sort of a cowboy looking dude with a guitar. And like, I was pretty excited about the model because the picture looks nice. He looks cool, cowboy hat, like single action army, and a guitar, like an acoustic guitar. But when they released the model, and we actually have a post about this that kind of shows some of the stuff, and if you can find some pictures, like you look at the picture and he looks cool, but like when you look at the model, like his legs, like the shin of the model is like about as long as the actual leg should be practically. And his head is like smaller than his knee. And like, they just don't look good. And it's not even a thing you could easily convert. Like, maybe you could try to chop off some of their ankles and shorten that stuff, but you're not going to be able to like,
it will be hard,
double the size of their heads. And again, like a lot of the stylistic, it's sort of a stylistic thing, but I feel for whatever reason, the current digital sculptors Ward is using has like just went overboard with this style to its detriment. There's this Neverborn guy like Tuco or something that I think like the artwork for him was cool, and I think he was just very recently released, and like looking at it, like it is laughable how long his legs are, which I mean, I guess he's a Neverborn, so he's a demon or something, so maybe you can explain that away, but
I mean, his body is also super long too, and I mean, if you look at the art for him, he doesn't look like that.
Yeah, and I guess, yeah, it's just unfortunate because like you get one of like their Shifted Loyalties book, which, you know, has a whole bunch of additional units and stuff, and you look through it and has all this colorful, interesting art, and if you see something that you're excited about, like at least at the rate they're going, the model probably isn't going to be worth getting. And like they actually just this week, I think, released the first concept art for a new game they're working on, which I don't even quite remember what it's called, but it looks like it's a game that's going to focus around
the other side.
Yeah, it's called the other side. That's right. That just features Earth, because Malifaux is all about people from Earth found some way to portal or something to this weird city town called Malifaux, but this is dealing with this other side. Yeah, they released a pretty neat concept art of some girl who I think's the leader of some faction or something that reminds me a lot of Dante from Devil May Cry, like the red jacket, big sword type thing. That looks good, but I feel like if
almost invariably, if what they're doing now, if they make a model of her head will be incredibly small, and her legs will be 2 times as long as they need to be. Like they won't follow the picture as a guide, because the illustration, like her legs are proper in length, and her proportions are fine. So I guess I hope that doesn't happen, but it's upsetting.
Maybe it's a phase and they'll grow out of it.
Well, I mean, they still do. They release a lot of models pretty quickly, and I mean, they still do release some nice ones. But
yeah, I would agree.
Some of the ones they've released are so objectionable. Like, it completely discolors everything else, and I'm tempted not to even look any further at the other stuff they're releasing.
So I guess, do we want to transition into your current project?
Yeah, I feel that's probably where we should go, yeah. Yeah, and so I think you're going to continue to try to paint some more models.
Yeah, no, I'm working on painting all the bases to all the other conversions I've done. And then I will probably transition into painting the final 2, like battle sister models that I converted. Mm-hmm. And then I'll work my way from there.
Yeah, and then I guess in kind of a little bit different, we're also doing a bunch of stuff with Kingdom Death again, primarily because Adam Poots finally sent out all the expansions that he released. And we got a whole bunch of them and have slowly started to unbox them and actually put them up on our YouTube channel, some of those unboxings, and have also started to just assemble some of them and show some pictures of that up on the blog. Hopefully we'll actually be able to play the game again and see how some of these things work, and if they make the game more enjoyable, a little bit less frustrating than it had been. Mm-hmm. So I feel Kingdom Death in general will need to be the subject of another expansion, because it's kind of at a weird place. Like, really great production values, good concept, some sort of wonky rules in some sense, and a price tag so large that no one could ever really get it. Unless you paid like a fourth of that for the Kickstarter, which is what we did. But
Brad, are you doing stuff? Are you doing stuff, Brad?
I'm working on some Gene Stealer cult models since I picked up Deathwatch Overkill. So
yeah, now that I'm excited to actually try to play the game. It seems kind of straightforward and fun.
Yeah, I like the effort they put into it so far. It's pretty solid.
Yeah, and like the from the little I saw, the instruction manual for it looked really nice, like really good graphic design, and the inclusion of kind of narrative story elements within the book that actually means something, I think is nice.
Yeah. I like that touch.
It wasn't just an afterthought. They actually cared about that.
Yeah.
Not just like, we need to release models and shit out some game to go along with it, which, I mean, admittedly, the game might not be like the best thing, but the fact that they included some narrative stuff to go along with it that they actually cared about is nice.
How many models have you assembled thus far, Brad?
5.
Seems pretty good.
Yeah, I'm pretty pleased. I'm trying to make them be on like tech bases, and that's kind of slowing the process down.
Well, so I need to get some of the models, and I can help you assemble them.
Yeah, that'd be handy.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and talk to you again soon. Bye.